What's up, everyone? Thank you guys so much for tuning in to this webinar. I first want to say a big thanks to my friends at X-Rite. They make amazing color management software, amazing color management products that really have changed the game for me as far as my post-processing. Before anything else, you can find me at clay-cook.com. On my blog, I've got both of these amazing slideshows broken down into individual blogs. Some of this imagery can be found on my website in my portfolio. Social media, check out my Twitter at ClayCookPhoto. Check out my Instagram at ClayCookPhoto. Facebook, facebook.com/ClayCookPhotography. And of course, find me on Periscope at ClayCookPhoto. I do a lot of videos just like this day in and day out every day, and it's a whole lot of fun. So at the age of 16, I started playing music with some friends of mine in a band. And our band In the Clear went from playing in bars and clubs to playing huge stadiums and some big venues. We sold over 20,000 records and we toured all over the nation. It was an amazing time. It was an amazing experience. We had a lot of good times and a lot of bad times, but it was definitely a journey that I will never forget. And during that time, I decided to start dabbling in Photoshop, and that went from at the age of 16 being pretty proficient in Photoshop to owning a full-time graphic design business, and that is how I supplemented my income on the road. And so during this process, I would design flyers for bands, album artwork. I'd even promote my own band through this graphic design business and do a lot of production stuff. And I learned a lot about the business side of marketing, the promotional end of marketing, and most importantly, networking. I decided that I needed a camera to shoot stock photography. A lot of my clients were asking for original imagery for their album artwork and whatnot. So I picked up a camera and I started dabbling. When I first started photography, I started shooting everything. I went from shooting my dog to shooting models, then to editorial work, and then I eventually got into advertising work. And I really found my style. I really found my voice in the first several years of shooting photography. I went from playing music in a band to owning a graphic design business to doing a lot of marketing stuff and then finally moving into full-time photography. But the question is, did I always want to be a photographer? No. The answer is straight out no, I didn't. I always wanted to be a musician for as long as I could ever remember. Now, growing up, I did have the desire to be a filmmaker and to be Steven Spielberg. My friends and I would make short films in the backyard and use ketchup as blood and use firecrackers for the explosions. And I never really had the desire to be a photographer until I really got into the art of graphic design and photography. It's something that sort of blindsided me and took over my life. And now I don't even know where I'd be without photography. I wouldn't certainly wouldn't be talking to each and every one of you and all these amazing photographers all over the world. It's truly changed my life. So I talk about inspiration a lot through a lot of my posts and a lot of my social media sharings and a lot of my imagery. Inspiration is everything. You have to continually be inspired to produce and output great work. So what inspires me? Life inspires me. Everything inspires me. I know that's a very vague term and a very vague answer, but it's true. Life in general. We've all been through heartbreak. We've been through divorce. We've been through extreme situations that they might cause some change in your life, and that change is very inspirational. I love going seeing films and checking out what other filmmakers do and how they compose shots, how they direct the subjects, and how they bring what they need to bring out of their actors and actresses. Whether it's a movie or it's a song or it's a life event or it's another photograph, they all inspire me in different ways. So soak in inspiration. What inspires me? Everything. Life in general inspires me. So I get asked this question all the time. Who is your favorite photographer? Well, that's like asking who your favorite band is. It's one of the toughest questions I have to answer. But it really comes down to 5 or 6 really strong photographers that I've admired for my entire life. These are the people that I would just go out and buy the magazine just for their cover shot or just for their feature. I would tear them out and I would hang them on the wall. And to this day, I have a tear sheet wall of some of these photographers. And the first one up is probably my biggest inspiration by far, and that is Annie Leibovitz. I love how she really brings out the mood and the subject matter. She really connects to her subjects more than anything else, above anything else. And everything else is just sort of background. It's just kind of noise. And she really shows environments and really shows things that a lot of photographers are kind of afraid to show. She's not afraid to break rules, and she doesn't care about composition as much as she cares about the subject matter. And that's what I love about her. Norman John Roy is another huge inspiration to me. Norman John Roy, you've seen him in tons and tons of editorials and portraits for years. And I think him, along with Annie, really control that market as far as the editorial work goes. Another new and upcomer that I just love and I really admire his work is Miller Mobley. Miller Mobley is an amazing advertising and editorial photographer that every time he posts a photo, I just like seriously get upset. And we always joke around, my assistants and I, because we are so enthralled with Miller Mobley's work and we just love everything he does. He's such an inspiration to myself and everyone around me, and he's such a young guy, and I think that's why it's also inspiring, is that I think he's only 26 years old, and I didn't even start shooting photography until I was 26 years old. So it's really cool to see the progression of Miller Mobley. And as far as the fashion end, of course, Patrick Demartelier is a huge inspiration to me. He's a fantastic photographer and an old school guy. Patrick is an incredible inspiration to me. His portraits are so smooth and their lighting is so perfect, and I love his work, and he's such an inspiration to many photographers, and I'm sure so many photographers around the world. And then lastly, this might be a guy that you don't really know about, but Christian Schuler is a massive inspiration to me. His photos are insanely incredible, and I'll just look at his work and just be blown away every time I visit his Facebook or his website. I can't get enough of Christian Schuler and the stuff he does. Inspire, take in, soak in, and then find your own unique voice. And I think that's what these photographers has done, and that's what I plan to do. I have one huge philosophy, and guys, that is being all in. You have to be utterly obsessed with photography if you want to take your brand to the highest level. You have to live and breathe and just be incredibly enthralled with photography. You have to make sacrifices. You have to go all in. Every photographer I've ever talked to that is a full-time, that does this for a living in maybe a smaller market, man, they are just all over it. They work non-stop. And I know it's hard because I've had the day jobs. I've done the day jobs. I know how that is. I used to call in sick to shoot photos. I used to take vacation days for a couple of weeks just to plan productions and like do what I needed to do to take my brand where it needs to be. So first rules of anything is to build relationships. That is the foundation of starting your brand, and my philosophy is building those relationships. And here's a few things that we always forget. Number one is smile, guys. Smile. When you go to meet people and you go to networking, just smile. I can't tell you how many people I've met where they come up to me and they just seem like they have a sour attitude. I just can't. It blows my mind. Smile when you meet people. That's a great first impression by far. Be in tune with your city. You know, the reason why I've asked you about all these cities and where you're from is because I want to know where your markets are. It's really awesome to see, oh, we've got people from West Virginia, and then we got people from Greece, we've got people from New York, we've got people from all over the place. So be in tune with your city and know your market, because when you know your market, then you're able to talk about your market, and then you're able to build those relationships and create the relationships. And you want to be confident but not cocky. Never go into meeting somebody like, here's my portfolio, and I'm a great photographer. You know, you never want to do that, guys. You always want to make sure that you're confident in your work. You're like, yeah, I love what I do. We have a great time doing it. Check out my work sometime. Here's a business card, or here's my portfolio. and you don't want to be cocky and overly confident about it. So those are some things that I always do to, one, build relationships, to network. And again, that is the foundation of what I've built my brand, and that is the foundation of my philosophy if you want to be a successful full-time photographer. Moving forward, you always want to invest into projects. When you're shooting creative projects, invest, spend money, okay? The more you invest into your personal projects, the more clients you'll get and the better clients you'll get, because if they see you really investing into yourself and investing into your own brand, they're going to want to spend money on that brand. See how that works? And then you're just going to scratch backs. An example here, my friend Gunnar Dethridge, he's a designer. He's actually on a photo shoot right now, which I just left. And Gunnar is a designer. You might have seen him from Project Runway, All Stars. He was also on Project Runway, I don't even know, a few seasons ago. I ended up shooting an entire fashion line for him, and this was like product photography. It was really basic stuff. And so I shot over 60 images, and we did 60 edits because I scratched his back. Literally, he'll come and help me anywhere I'm at. He'll design, he'll build sets, he'll do any sort of production. So if you scratch backs, you do favors, you do favors for the right people, then it's going to pay back tenfold. And then finally, the reward is in the risk. And as photographers, it's so important that we take risks. If you're not experimenting, if you're not reaching out of the box, if you're not taking risks in everything you do in your career, probably never become a success. You might be wealthy, you might be happy, but if you don't take risks, your brand isn't going to go and become a major success. So every day I take risks, and it might be the smallest risk. It might be just trying a different light style, all the way up to investing in a huge shoot, and you're risking the chance of failure. But never be afraid of failure, and failure is so important. Failure is extremely important to everything I do. So the more I fail, the more I learn. And so it comes back to just shooting, and we'll talk about that here a little later. So this is a funny photo. This is me when I first started. You see I'm using like a constant light. I've got like these little fans and this little junky tripod, and that's how I first started out. I didn't know what I was doing, but I was like, hey, let's play with light, let's experiment. I'm going to take risks here, and hopefully it pays off. My roommates were just so sick of me. This is my roommate, and he's obviously thrilled to be being photographed right now. But this is when I first figured out that you can shoot off-camera flash. I had no idea that you could actually do that. But it all started from here. From this photo to all of these photos, this was the transformation of me. And I shot all of these photos in the first year of my photography career. And as you can tell, I experimented with everything. I went outside the box. I did light painting, natural light, went crazy on Photoshop. I put speed lights everywhere. I did all sorts of crazy things in my first year of photography because it was so important to experiment and to get outside the box and really find my style, which we're about ready to dive into now. Africa. I don't know how many people actually live in Africa out there or have been to Africa, but it was really an amazing journey for me. Over the past 3 months, I've been on quite the adventure, and it's really taken me out of my comfort zone and put me in a place where I didn't know what I was doing. And that was such a good thing, and I came back more inspirited than ever. So we went over there for a company called Waterboys. Waterboys is an organization that was started by Chris Long. And Chris Long plays for the St. Louis Rams. He's Howie Long's son. And Waterboys is a foundation that he started to get NFL players, to get NHL players, to get different celebrities and sports stars to get involved in this, go over to Tanzania, provide water relief, or to write a check and to help out the people of Tanzania because they're desperate for water over there. People are dying over there every day of dysentery, and we went over there, and our job was to build content for Waterboys. It was to create some promotional material, and it was to really just build some content for Waterboys and for the NFL as well. So NFL was heavily involved in this production. So I'm going to scan through some photos here. A lot of these are color, a lot of these are black and white, a lot of these are documentary, a lot of these are portraits. It was a very experimental thing for me. It was so run and gun. It was a crazy experience. That's a Waterboys poster that all these African children were signing. And this is Justin Gustavus, and he was our director of photography. He's shooting with a Sony FS7 there. This was in a school that we shot at. And we really dove into 3 different facets of Tanzania. One of them was nature. And we went on 3 different safaris, and we really wanted to capture the beauty of Tanzania and really everything that Tanzania has to offer, so to speak. Then we went to the marketplaces, and the marketplaces was filled with tons of people that were asking all sorts of crazy questions and wanted us to buy things from them. And for me, it was almost like an overwhelming visual explosion. I shot everything I could. I shot the ground, I shot people, I shot, everything. And I had never really been into a situation like that ever before. So it was really a crazy, crazy experience. And this is an example of a snapshot that I just nailed out of a car window. And I just really love this photograph. So during that travel time, we went out to a very remote Maasai village. And in this Maasai village, this was a way to see what these people really drink. And let me just tell you, this water is horrible. This is Chris Long, and this is Doug Pitt. Doug Pitt is the Goodwill ambassador for Tanzania. He's also Brad Pitt's brother. So that was kind of cool to chat with him about. And Brad. Anyway, this is the water. And as you can see here, it's crazy over there. It is just super bad. There's animals defecating in it. They're bathing in it. And this is the same water that they drink and bathe in as well. So it's a very dire situation over there. And these kids, these are Maasai kids in this village, and this is exactly what they drink. And it's a very, very tough situation over there. And in this case, they have to walk for about 2 miles just to get to their water source. And they carry these giant jugs over there. For us, water is so easily accessible, but for them, it's something they have to really, truly work for. So with this village, they want to build a water well there, so where it's easily accessible and where it's just as accessible as it is to us. And this is a behind-the-scenes shot. You see here in the bottom right corner, there's Corey Deeb. He's the director and producer, and then Justin, the director of photography. And they filmed this incredible promotional narrative of what these people experience every day. So if you go check out Natus Films, Natus has the promotional video up on Vimeo right now. Now we got into portraits, and this was promotional portraits for both Doug and for Chris Long. And so we just did these snapshots, kind of run and gun. I had about 4 minutes, not even that, to really nail these shots. So it was a pretty interesting situation. If you go to my blog, you see more behind the scenes. You get to see this GoPro video that I shot, really showing the behind the scenes. I was able to shoot some of the Maasai elders and villagers while I was there as well. And we used a ProPhoto B2 kit. Everything was really moody. It was very underexposed, and I wanted to get the sense of these subjects and what they're going through. And these people are just enthralled with the camera, and that's the greatest part, is that they really don't really know too much about technology, or really don't know about a camera so much. So these children especially just stare. They just will stare at you, and it will create some amazing photographs. And this was a Maasai warrior. He would just follow us around. I asked him if he wanted a photo, and he just kind of nodded, and got my assistant, who was another Maasai warrior, and we nailed this shot real quick. So these are images that both the NFL and Waterboys will be using in content to kind of promote the beauty of Tanzania. Moving forward, we went all these marketplaces, and this is some more shots just driving down the road, and really capturing the essence and the beauty of Tanzania. So this is an example of a thriving community that now has a water well. So this village has a water well, and they're obviously thriving. They love this water, and it was so great to see. This is the future president of Tanzania, if I'm not mistaken. I forgot his name, but he was there celebrating with all these people, and there was like hundreds and hundreds of people that gathered for this production that we did. And for us to get these photos, it was really an amazing experience. I love the color in this. I love the moodiness. The sun had just gone down, and these children were kind of just hiding away from the hundreds of people. And if you're ever in a photo situation or a photojournalism situation, you will have to have your eyes everywhere. And so for me, this is an example of me just simply turning around and seeing these people. Throughout this, I'm going to answer as many questions as I can. I'm going to wait till mostly the end to answer a lot of these questions, but I will answer all the questions. And if you have any more questions when this thing is over too, then be sure to email me, and I can help definitely answer. Most of this was shot with my Sony A7, and then I also brought over a Canon 5D Mark III. This is an example of a Sony A7, and I just love the detail and the contrast that that camera produces. It's really amazing. We met a lot of cool people, and it comes back to the story of networking. We met this guy in a bar, and I swear this is a true story. Met this guy in a bar, and he says, I've hang glide off Mount Kilimanjaro, which Mount Kilimanjaro is one of the 7 summits. It's the highest peak in Africa. And he's like, I'm trying to find some filmmakers and some photographers to go up with me, climb the mountain, and hang glide off with me. And great guy. We shared a lot of drinks together. And so by the end of the trip, he's like, hey, I'm gonna get this Cessna. I know this pilot. He's gonna fly you up to the summit of Mount Kilimanjaro, and I want you to take some photos for me, and I want you to really get a sense of it. And so that's exactly what we did. It was an epic journey in this Cessna plane. It was incredibly cold. It was incredibly bumpy and kind of nerve-wracking to go up that high in a Cessna plane, but we did, and it was really amazing. And then this is pretty much the final shot that I captured in Tanzania. And this is very strange stuff for me, guys. Obviously, most of you probably know me as the fashion photographer or the editorial photographer, or the advertising photographer. People need this stuff. They need this content. And this is also considered advertising work. So advertising is not just the well-lit production stuff. It can be the photojournalism stuff. And this is a great way for me to really reach outside my box and really find what I love to do. Moving on to India. So I'm going to take a couple of questions here before we go into India. How do you differentiate photographs from snapshots? For me, it's all about mood. It's about finding the right subject matter. So if a snapshot is just, a snapshot and it's not really, it's not meaningful, then that's the difference. I want something that means something. Do I only shoot in RAW? Yes. Okay, moving to India. So India was a crazy experience. It was a crazy journey, just like Tanzania. We went over there for the Good Samaritan School. And Good Samaritan is a non-profit school where this woman, Anathi, this is Anathi, Jessica, she started in a public toilet with 5 students, and now she has over 5,000 students. And so she is considered the Mother Teresa of India, actually. For me to go over there and to photograph Anathi and to really build some content for her school and for the people that are on the board of this school was an amazing honor for me. And the school started in the slums, and this is a picture of a New Delhi slum. This is the Daxampuri slum, and people live on top of each other. They're just stacked up on top of each other. And if you don't know anything about New Delhi is the home to about 13 million people. It was visual overload, let me tell you. And so I went through almost 3,000 frames to get, I think the final delivery was about 200, maybe 100 frames. And in these slums, this is where the school started, and the school is based right outside of these slums. And they're very hardcore. They smell very bad, and it's very hot over there. And it's tough to put you in this situation, but it was definitely an experience. This is Corey, our director, and Reed, our second camera, traveling through these slums, and you can see it's very tight quarters. It's extremely tight quarters. This was shot with my Sony A7. This is just driving down the road and just kind of snapshotting and getting as much people as I can. This guy followed us around on our production, and I love the light. This is all using natural light, and I'll tell you when I don't use natural light, but for the most part, I really didn't have time to break out the strobes. If I did break out the strobes, it would suddenly become a production. And when it was a production, people would just gather in the hundreds. And when you just turned around, this is an average day in the life of us in our production in New Delhi, India. People would gather in the hundreds just to see what we were doing. And even with security, we had about 10 security guards, really crazy intense production. And they gathered, like I said, in the hundreds. But there was a lot of these intimate moments where I would just be walking down the streets, sort of very low profile, and would capture guys like this, just kind of wondering what I was doing there. I was a white person in a New Delhi slum, so it was really awesome to kind of just sneak in shots here and there. Shots like this, this was just a moment in time. It was literally a tick in time. It was a second probably and I got lucky, honestly. There's shots like this that, for me, just kind of really opened my eyes to style, to subject matter more than anything else. This is a behind-the-scenes shot. This is when we break out the ProPhoto B2 kit on production and take some production stills, and this is when the crowd would gather, for sure. I love shots like this. I'm not even sure this kid knew he was being photographed, but he was working with a snake wrangler. It was a crazy thing to see this kid working with the snake wrangler, and he had handling those snakes no problem. Even though that's probably a harmless snake, I think it's a rat snake, he had no problem with it. Here's another behind-the-scenes shot of our production. We were filming a gambling scene here, and we went over there to build content for the Good Samaritan School, but also produce a short narrative commercial, if you will. But it was a very run-and-gun situation because we had so much crowd. And as you can see in the background, that was a controlled version of the crowd. So it was tough. It was not easy. Gotta love monkeys, just everywhere. Some more shots, just lucky shots. The natural light there is completely overcast, but it's consistent. I love the motion blur. You can see I shot this driving down the road probably at like 45 miles an hour and just happened to get lucky. There I am on the left with the production crew and some of the actors. So this is the school. They all wear uniforms, the Good Samaritan School, and again, she has 5,000 students in over 3 locations. So this was an extremely overwhelming thing to see. These students were enthralled in everything we did, and I even got a couple of portraits of the kids. But I love this kind of stuff, which is just really off the cuff and just a moment in time, and it really was a beautiful experience. At the end of our production, we were able to, of course, go see the Taj Mahal, and then we flew over to Bagdogra, and then we went up to Darjeeling, which is on the base of the Himalayas. So once we finished up our production, it was kind of our own adventure, and we set our own journey. This is the inside of the Taj Mahal. It's a really amazing, amazing, cool thing. This is right outside Agra. And so this is Darjeeling. This is when we went up to the base of the Himalayas, and they have this steam engine toy train is what they call it. And it was really cool to go on this thing. Darjeeling is known for their tea. As you can see, there's a lot of tea. These were all taken on the A7. Yes, a lot of these photos were taken on the A7. I love the A7, especially for travel. And so this India experience was something that really shaped who I was. And as I said earlier, I came back really inspirited. I've been on this path of wellness and finding a balance between work life and balance, and I think that's extremely important. Even though I say, like, oh, you have to be obsessed with photography, and that is so true, but it can come at a cost, and I think for me last year it came at a cost. And so I've been really finding myself and finding my style and what I love to do. I climbed this mountain in Rajasthan, India, and it was something that I finally realized, hey, this is what I love to do. I love shooting editorial work. I love shooting the advertising work. I love building content for brands. I really love taking stories that make a difference and really build them and create some beautiful imagery for people. So what is style? what is my style? And so at the end of the day, style for me is all about mimicking daylight or mimicking sunlight when it comes to lighting. I love epic, interesting landscapes and compositions, but I think that for me, the style is all about a beautiful light that mimics natural light. And so style plays a huge role in what I do and what you guys should do as photographers these days. Because there is so many photographers out there, it's important that each and every one has their own unique style, because you'll never set yourself apart if you don't have your own style. So going on these trips and really experiencing this extreme situations, I was able to come back with sort of a revised, really refreshed view. No longer for me style is it's about, you know, landing the perfect image. Style for me is landing an image that tells a story. And I think that's something that each and every one of you need to take away from this, is that what is this subject matter telling me? What is this photograph going to tell other people? Okay, it might be perfectly lit. It might be amazing. It might have some super awesome color. It might have some great subject matter, but what does it mean to you, and what does it mean to the viewer looking at it? What's important with style is experimenting, reaching outside the box, really taking a portrait and saying, where can we go with this? How can we make this better? And so really exploring the realms of subject matter. And so coming back, that's what I've really done. I've really started experimenting with layers and canvases, but still maintaining a simple light. What do I look for in a great portrait? And I get asked this question quite a bit, and it comes down to subject matter, number one. Everything else is just not nearly as important. And what I learned in Africa and India is that subject matter is everything, because you can't rely on dramatic lighting, you can't rely on, you know, taking your time. You have to really, it's all about the people and the subject matter. And so when I look for a great portrait, I'm looking at everything. I'm looking at the expression, I'm looking at the model, I'm looking at, you know, the composition, the lighting, I'm looking at the landscape, everything. But it all comes down to what the photograph means. So reach outside your box, guys. Find your style. Be unique to you. That is so important. And going forward, I recommend that you guys just shoot. This is something that I say that's so important. And my number one advice that I tell photographers, I always get this question of like, I've been shooting for 20 years. How can I get better? Hey, I've been shooting for 2 months. How can I get better? It all comes down to just shooting. So shooting, 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 because the more you shoot, the more you're going to fail. And the more you fail, the more you will learn. That is so important. Don't ever get comfortable and experiment. Shoot every day. Shoot with your phone. Do what you have to do. Really explore your versatility and find your niche, guys. I know so many photographers that they shoot everything. They shoot weddings, babies, portraits, editorial work, advertising. They do it all. But that's not how you form a style, and that is not how you build your brand. You want to find your niche, and you want to set small goals. Set the small goals to reach the big goals. They're like stepping stones. They're like steps. So you have a huge goal at the end of these steps, but it takes small goals to get there. And then finally, shoot for the stars. Everything you do, every production that you do, shoot for the stars. Go above and beyond for your clients, because that is what will come back tenfold on you. So always shoot for the stars when it comes to pricing, when it comes to production, when it comes to client relationships, when it comes to building relationships. Go above and beyond. I love this quote: you miss 100% of the shots you never take. And that's so true. As an editorial photographer, it's important to find my style and to constantly morph my style into something I love, and it's getting easier and easier, but because I shoot almost every day. I shoot every day, and most of my work ends up in magazines. And I think coming back to this company, X-Rite, which I love everyone at X-Rite. They're so awesome. And so it's important for me to have a color calibrated monitor. And if you guys don't have a color calibrated monitor, it's important that you do. So X-Rite makes these wonderful devices called the i1 Display Pro. An i1 Display Pro is a calibrator. It takes 5 minutes. You throw it on your monitor. You go through the process. So what you see on your monitor is exactly what you'll see in print. So we'll provide a link to the i1 Display Pro. Check it out. X-Rite's awesome. They also make awesome products such as the color checker, which I use quite a bit when I'm doing these kind of photojournalism things, because color, especially when you're going in and out of different lighting scenarios, it's important that my color is right in camera so I can turn these things around pretty quickly. We're going to get into some questions now. We've been going for about 50 minutes now, so I'll take quite a few of these questions. What kind of gear do you use, and how do you pack it for traveling by plane? I use a Canon 5D Mark III. I use a Sony a7 II. I have multiple lenses, and I have one case to carry that. I use a Think Tank Airport Security version 2.0, and this allows me to plenty of space to pack all that gear, as well as a ProPhoto B2 kit. And if you've seen the new ProPhoto heads, they're very small, they're very light, and they can pack into a Think Tank. And so I carry one carry-on, and that is my travel kit. I use three-legged thing tripods, and I pack that into checked luggage. Then I also throw usually a couple of modifiers, like a Photex soft lighter, which that's my favorite modifier of all time. I throw that in my checked luggage. What are key things and early steps you would advise someone to take if looking to do photography in support of a cause, especially going to another country? So it comes down to building relationships, which I talked about earlier. I think that if you build a relationship with the right people, then that kind of opportunities will present themselves. But I've never been presented an opportunity like I have until this past year, and it's kind of opened Pandora's box for me. I went to Tanzania, Africa, then I went to New Delhi, India. I'm going to Cuba, Havana, Cuba next month twice to shoot a fashion editorial. And then I've got plans to maybe go to Ethiopia next year and then back to Tanzania. And I love building content for brands. I love talking to people about brands. And I love telling them about social media, about the best way to push this content and to really put it out there, because it's such rich content. So if you're looking to do this, I think the best thing that you want to do by far is have somebody on the ground. You want to have a local there to be your guide. For example, in New Delhi, we had a guide, we had a driver, we had security, and then we had a sort of a production manager as well, and also a translator. So we had different facets of all these people, and this is a major production in an alternate country, and it was not easy. And you also want to make sure that you take the right security precautions, and that means taping up gear, making your gear look terrible, because if your gear looks expensive, then someone's going to steal it, or at least they're going to try to steal it. So make your gear look real crappy, and the people are like, well, that's not expensive at all. I was told that anytime you take a photo where the face is recognizable, you need a model release to sell the photo. How is it possible in a place like Tanzania? I own the copyright, so I can take a photo of anyone, and I will always have the copyright. I don't need a model release for anything. Now, it's good to have a model release because you could potentially avoid a lawsuit that way. People can sue for their likeness, but they will never win, probably. So I think that they're going to be used in marketing materials and advertising, one that these people will never see ever. It will never reach them, nor do they have the resources to probably see these. So I think, as sad as that is, I think that that's the truth. What do you use to process black and white? I use Photoshop for everything. What is your ISO? My ISO varies. My ISO varies throughout the entire process of shooting a production like this. I could go from anywhere from 100 ISO to 2000 ISO. Why did I shoot with two different systems, Sony and Canon? For me, a camera is just only an extension of an eye. So I don't really care about the brands. I don't care about any of that stuff. If a certain camera has a certain look, I'm going to use it. So for me, the Sony was low profile, compacted down really nicely, and so I took it with me on those areas where I needed to be low profile. when I was doing production work, when I was shooting, the stills that required some high-res stuff, I broke out my Canon. Have I experienced depression from poverty? I was impacted by it. We were there for 3 weeks, and we spent the majority of the time in the slums and in poverty day in and day out, sunrise to sunset. And I'd have to say that it was really a true experience that I was impacted by. I came back, and it took me almost 2.5 weeks to really recover from the trip as far as jet lag and just kind of coming back into a place where those comforts that they consider luxuries are everyday for us. Submitting for magazines. So if you want to be published in a magazine, the key is to simply know people, guys. It comes back to my philosophy, what we talked about early in this webinar. Meet people, build those relationships, smile, talk to people, be confident in your work, know people. Get out of your house, guys. Get off Facebook, get offline, and really get out and meet people. The more people know you and know your face and know your reputation, the more they're going to want to use you. For example, I have this client. They have access to tons of amazing photographers, but they love working with me because they know me. They know my work. They know I'll deliver every time, and they love what I do. What are my favorite lenses? By far, my favorite lenses, one is the 50mm 1.2, and then hell has frozen over, guys. And I would like to say that one of my new favorite lenses for travel photography is the 24-70 2.8. The reason why I say that is because it's so versatile. It's such a versatile lens that it's become a workhorse for me. But if I'm shooting portraits, by far 50mm 1.2. What do I usually shoot aperture-wise? I usually stick between 5.6 and f8 with everything I do. I never shoot anything wide open. So for me, I want the viewer to look at this photograph as if they were standing there. And if I shoot something at 1.2, that's not how it would look. So that's important. Do I see myself moving into exclusively mirrorless? Of course. I think we'll all be moving into mirrorless at some point. It's just going to be an easier, better process. When I first started out, how did I go about getting wardrobe and access to the various locations that you shoot in? Again, man, it comes down to building relationships, to knowing people, knowing designers, knowing stylists, meeting people at boutiques, meeting people that are managers at big department stores, meeting all these people and talking to them. And then access to various locations. Man, when I first started, all I did was call them. And I say, hey, I'm a photographer. This is what I want to produce. Here's my portfolio. What can I do for you? Everyone needs photography. Everyone wants some sort of high quality photography. If you want to shoot in someone's house, just say, hey, I'll shoot some pictures of your home, or I'll shoot some of your pictures of your kids, or I'll do this. Most of the time it was always a fair, even trade, and we worked it out that way. And so I've shot in some crazy locations all over the world, and it was always ironed out by trade or knowing someone. Do I ever use Lightroom? I do. Is film ever a consideration? On these big productions, there's just absolutely no way that I could pull off film unless I had an extra 20 minutes to shoot. But all those photos that you saw from India and New Delhi and Africa, those were shot in about literally less than 2 minutes. I have tried Capture One. I love Capture One. I love Phase One. I love everybody over Digital Transitions and Phase One. I love working with Phase One. They're amazing cameras, amazing kits. I love Capture One. How many images to put in your book and portfolio? 30 to 60. And try for the low end, 30. Do I ever shoot aperture priority? No. I always shoot manual. Again, check out my blog, clay-cook.com. I've got an f-stopper profile where you can see tons and tons of articles about everything I've ever done. I really live a very transparent ideal, so everything that I do is available online. Go check me out on my website. You can see my portfolio on there. You can see everything that I've done. My Twitter account, @ClayCookPhoto, Instagram, @ClayCookPhoto, my Periscope, the same thing, @ClayCookPhoto. Check me out on Facebook, of course, and if you guys have any questions at all, ever, feel free to hit me up on my social networks, on Instagram, on Twitter, or email info@claycookphotography.com. So I'm going to take 2 more questions, and then we're going to wrap this up. Have you taken any formal photography training? I have not. I've never been to school. I've been to 1 workshop in my entire life, and that really changed the game for me. I still credit my friend Brett Jarnigan for that. I'll answer this final one. How difficult was it to make photography in Africa? It was actually very easy because the subject matter there is extremely intense. Even though we have to keep a low profile, we have to travel as if we were tourists, not journalists, because the crowd can get really crazy. It was actually very easy because everybody's enthralled with the camera. People in Africa are amazing, beautiful people, and they're truly interested when someone like us comes over there and does this big production, and they think we're Hollywood, but we're definitely not. We're running and gunning, just building content at the end of the day. All right, thanks, guys. I really appreciate you tuning in. Again, any questions, feel free to email me, info@claycookphotography.com. Hit me up on Twitter, Instagram, Periscope. I love talking to photographers. I love talking to everyone about this stuff all the time. This is such a really cool thing for me to do. Thank you guys again. Talk soon.